In this third world country, rich people treat the poor worse than they treat slaves. The rich are free to do as they please. A murder of the household help is easily solved with a bribe to set things straight. If a rape occurred, a little money would more than solve the problem. Everyone is up for sale, including medical doctors. You can abuse the poor for a price and it would be as though nothing ever happened. Not only was there corruption and fraud in the justice and financial institutions, but religion was an added protection, further empowering the rich. Whether compensating authorities to get away with a crime or rewarding a victim to keep their mouth shut, it is a perfect system operating behind a closed society. You can even buy the Wizard of Oz behind the Iron Curtain. In the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, most of the unfortunates sentenced to stoning every Friday are women. According to their law, it is easy to prove adultery in the case of a woman, but not so much for the man. A pregnant woman is by no stretch of the imagination the result of a sexual liaison, since birth control pills and condoms are illegal. It is assumed an unmarried woman has committed adultery once pregnant for whatever reason, which explains the gender bias. Furthermore, there was another method for proving adultery on the part of a woman. If a woman was accused or suspected of adultery or immorality, the court would issue something called Form Number 8. The accused would be sent to the hospital and her vagina would be examined by a female doctor. The doctor's job then is to ascertain if the accused is a virgin. An unmarried girl who has lost her virginity is deemed to have committed the crime of adultery or some sort of premarital sex. If she happened to be married, then the doctor would take a swab to test for semen. This second method should not be confused with a DNA test. None of the third world countries is obligated to conduct DNA tests. Those in first world countries have trouble understanding this because they have largely closed the huge gap between the rich and poor and the male and female. Religion does not dictate state law in every aspect. Opposition to religious norms is not criminalized. No one gets stoned for adultery. No one loses a hand for theft. In the OPEC countries, most of the citizens are very rich. The poor comprise migrant workers who leave their impoverished homes to work for rich Arabs. Their Arab masters, employers, take advantage of their situation, which gives them virtual carte blanche. Rayhana was one such person, treated by the rich as subhuman and untouchable, yet not a slave. A dog in the house of her Arab employer was better fed and got better treatment than the people in the slums of India, Rayhana's country. The storeroom she was allowed to sleep in was much bigger than the shanty that her family members were living in. Rayhana began her second day in the kitchen and the noble woman forced her to go from room to room and from passage to passage, sweeping, mopping, dusting, organizing furniture and a whole host of other petty chores. At that time, there were no men in the house. The two sons were at school and Sheikh Ahmed went to one of the homes of his other 3 wives, as did his chauffeur. The second day saw Rayhana's daughter become an unpaid maidservant. The Cobra woman gave Ifat some work to do too. Rayhana, simple and naive, did not know her rights and allowed her daughter to become an unpaid child servant. Before Rayhana had come to work in the house of the noble rich family, Sheikh Ahmed used to spend one day at each wife's home. According to the Sharia law, a polygamist is supposed to treat his wives equally. If he had sex with his first wife one day, he is obligated to sleep with his second wife on the second day and so on. After that, he would come to the first wife and the cycle would repeat itself. Imagine a husband one night slept with his 16-year-old wife and on the next night he's supposed to have sex with his 60-year-old wife. Good on papers, but in reality every polygamist is a dirty cheater. The Prophet Muhammad was more than accomplished with his women than just about any Muslim man alive then or now. He had 9 wives and 2 female slaves. He used to sleep with each and every one of his 9 wives daily. His biography says that he would have sexual intercourse with all of his 9 wives in a single hour. Imagine a man having sex with 9 women in 60 minutes, a wife every 6 minutes. The hadiths record that he would have sexual intercourse with his 9 wives washing only once. I do not think this is something to be proud of, and washing up after each session would probably leave the wives with less than 4 minutes apiece. Muslim imams consider it an honor and are proud to relate this story of their prophet having sex with 9 women in 1 hour and only one washing. If you would ask them how could an upright normal human being have sex with 9 females in 1 hour's time or do something that even a sex maniac or an animal could not do, they would tell you that their prophet was unlike any other normal human being, but he was given by Allah the power of 40 men. This might answer the question of normality, but I do not think it would even begin to touch on the question of morality. Even the great King Solomon with more than 1,000 wives could not accomplish this feat. According to the ancient Mosaic law, he could only sleep with one wife and after washing remain unclean until evening. The second day for Rayhana was much better than the first. She did not need to spend as many hours in the washroom washing clothes. Her duties that day were cleaning and preparing food. She had not prepared a whole meal unsupervised because she had not yet learned how to cook Arabic food. After 2 uneventful days under the Sheikh's roof, something terrible befell Rayhana on the 3rd day. Rayhana went to the washroom to take a bath as the Cobra woman had ordered her. Rayhana was under the impression that she was not allowed to take a bath in the washrooms of the noble family. She picked up that notion from her experience keeping houses for the rich Indians she used to work for in India. Indians will never allow their men servants or maid servants to use their toilets. If their servants felt the need to go, then it was off to the nearest public washroom. In Bombay, most of the public washrooms are in the local train station. There are also public washrooms in the crowded shawls and slums. There is nothing in the entire world filthier than the public washrooms in India. Since her arrival, Rayhana and her daughter did not use the washroom except for the most dire emergencies. On her 3rd day, the noble woman discovered that her maidservant had not washed her body or her clothes since her arrival. This discovery prompted the dragging of Rayhana from the kitchen to the bathroom. Gestures were made in the direction of the faucet and the tub. She made Rayhana take off her outer dress and she threw it in the sink and turned water over it. She tugged and pulled at her underdress to instruct her to wash it as well. Signing her intent, she made it known to Rayhana that she was to spend at least 2 hours washing off the accumulated filth on her body and washing her clothes and underwear. That done, she was to wait inside the washroom until her clothes dried before coming out in clean, dry clothes, and she pointed to the curtain rod above the tub. Then she pointed to the daughter who had followed them into the washroom and said she was to repeat the process for her also. As soon as the Cobra went out of the washroom, Rayhana told Ifat to wait in the kitchen until she finished her bath. As soon as Ifat left, Rayhana removed all of her clothes and stood bare naked. When she stripped off all her clothes, she walked toward the mirror and looked at her image. She began to turn around and look at her reflection in the mirror. She felt pleased at the full figure standing before her and the shapeliness of her naked body. Rayhana had never seen a full-sized mirror before. For the first time, she could see her entire body and she liked it. She felt shy and covered her face with her hands. Then, she remembered her bath. She walked toward the tub and looked at it. She had never seen a tub except in an Indian movie she had watched with the love of her life, Jamal Khan, at a movie theater. In the movie, she saw the heroine taking a bath in a tub and that gave her some idea of what she was supposed to do while she was bathing herself. Rayhana stepped carefully inside the tub and turned on the faucet. The warm water began to fill the tub. While the water was running, she started to check all the perfumes and makeup bottles on the shelves. She opened each bottle and smelled its scent. Each one she liked, she would spray some of it on her body. After that, she picked up something that looked like soap powder and emptied half of it on the water. She shook the water with her hands until it looked like it was covered with white bubbles and cotton balls. Then, slowly she immersed herself in the warm water. She felt a wonderful sensation. She became as happy as a child. Then, she began to imitate what she saw the heroine doing in the movie. She stretched her legs and lifted them up, and brought them down again. She lifted her legs up again and opened them. She separated her legs as wide as she could. She enjoyed the slight pain she felt in the area around her privates. She did this exercise many times until she couldn't do it anymore. Then, she began to play with her hands and breasts. She held her 2 breasts with both her hands and jingled them and fondled them. Rayhana became really naughty and stood up. With soap suds covering parts of her body, she went to the mirror and began to dance and tease her image. She even boxed her image in the mirror. She turned around and began to dance with her backside facing the mirror. She enjoyed playing with herself so much. She returned to the tub and immersed her body in the warm water again. This time, she began to paddle the water with her legs as if she was swimming. She learned that from the Indian movie too. Then, she began to throw the soap suds up into the air. After playing inside the tub for a long time, Rayhana remembered she had to wash her clothes. She came out of the tub and went to the sink with the smaller mirror. She filled the sink with water and began to wash her clothes piece by piece. She first washed her top dress and then her underdress. After that, she took her bra and washed it. Lastly, she washed her underwear. She hanged them on the curtain rod above the tub. She knew that she had to wait inside the washroom until her clothes were dry. Once again, she began to dance and repeat her naughtiness all over again. This time, she stimulated her body beyond her ability to control it. Relishing the rare moment of privacy, she sat on the edge of the empty tub and masturbated. Rayhana spent what seemed like a long time inside the washroom until the Cobra woman knocked on the door and shouted at her. She quickly put on her clothes and rushed out of the washroom. Her clothes were sticking to her body because they were only half dry. As a punishment for her unnecessary delay, the noble woman did not allow her to wash the clothes of her little daughter or give her a bath. Rayhana would not have removed her clothes, stood bare naked, spread her legs wide open and exposed her private parts, danced naked, fondled her breasts, washed her bra and underwear while she was standing fully naked, or inserted her fingers into her vagina and masturbated, if she knew that everything she did would be filmed on tape. Husam and Hisham had bought a surveillance camera, installed it inside their mother's washroom, and waited for their gorgeous maidservant to take a bath. While Rayhana was playing in the nude and exploring every inch of herself, the 2 sons were sitting in another room watching her and masturbating too. The 2 brothers showed the tape to their friends at school. They then downloaded it onto the internet under the title, An Indian Film Actress Taking a Bath. Husam and Hisham did not simply stop at secretly photographing their new maidservant bare naked. When they saw her prancing around in the nude enticing and exciting them, they decided to go even further and get her. They knew their mother locked her up in the storeroom every night, so they stole the key from their parents' bedroom and went to the local hardware store and made a duplicate copy. They then returned the key back to their parents' bedroom without them ever noticing it was missing. The Pakistani driver returned after 5 days and Mrs. Ahmed called him to the kitchen and told him to translate for her. She then supplemented her rules and list of chores for the Indian maidservant. Whatever she could not impart to Rayhana during his absence, she more than made up for. She insulted and humiliated her in front of the chauffeur, telling him to not leave one word out that she was saying. She told him to tell Rayhana that she was a dirty, filthy animal and behaved as if she came straight from out the jungle. Rayhana cried as the chauffeur translated all the revilement, insults, and derogatory remarks from the Cobra mistress. The noble woman felt pleased at the great distress she was able to inflict, and now that her goal was accomplished, Mrs. Ahmed dismissed the Pakistani driver. She remained for some time with Rayhana in the kitchen and forced her to do as many unnecessary chores as possible. The holy woman of Allah then abruptly marched out of the kitchen and left without telling Rayhana what to do next. Rayhana knew that if the evil woman came back and found her sitting with her daughter in the kitchen doing nothing, she would shout at her. Therefore, she decided to go to the other rooms and start cleaning them. She just wanted to be busy doing something. She had already swept and mopped all the rooms, passages, and hallways. She told her daughter to sit and wait for her in the kitchen. It was one of the new rules she learned that day through the translator that her daughter was not to follow her from place to place all over the house. When the mother wasn't working in the kitchen, the daughter had to put. The Cobra woman never showed any compassion toward the little Ifrit either. She detested her the same way she hated her mother. She did not give her any of her son's old toys to play with or buy her any dolls. She did not promise or suggest she go to school to get an education like her privileged sons. She even forced her to do menial tasks. When her mother left, Ifrit sat on the floor of the kitchen, folded her legs, and began to look blankly at the empty walls. With nothing to do to amuse herself, she hugged her legs and rocked back and forth waiting for her mother to return. Rayhana began her stretch down one of the long hallways. She thought that there was no one else in the house except Mrs. Ahmed. She expected that Mrs. Ahmed would be in her bedroom. She decided to clean every room except the room of the mother lion. She knew that if she dared step inside the Cobra Lioness bedroom without her permission and oversight, she would be scolded and beaten. The Cobra had already told her never to step foot inside her bedroom without her permission or when she wasn't there. But, she gave her permission to enter all the other rooms in the house. She expressly told her to keep herself away from the rooms of her sons when they were at home. Rayhana spent a short time cleaning the hallway and then she began with the other rooms. She began with Hisham's room first. When Rayhana stepped inside Hisham's room, she remembered how the two juveniles had come to the storage room at night and showed her a video of her nude inside the washroom and her naughty behavior while she was alone. Then, they began to touch her body. Rayhana understood what they wanted from her. She was scared that the two brothers might show the video to their mother and father if she would not allow them to touch her. She thought that if she refused to give them what they wanted, she would lose her job and be sent to the streets along with her little daughter. She did not know the way to Aslam's apartment. She had no money to purchase tickets to return to her country. She was totally at the mercy of her employers. She regretted what she had done in the washroom. Therefore, against her wishes, she allowed them to abuse her body. In Bombay, no one had ever tried to blackmail her. She remembered that some rich Indian men tried to buy her body with money, but she always refused their money and their advances. She threatened them with going to the police if they dared touch her. She even walked away from some jobs when the harassment became unbearable. Outside of this house, there was nowhere to go. She was petrified of the Saudi police. The last thing she wanted was a repeat of her encounter with the police and the horrible experience of being raped and nearly beaten to death. Once she succumbed to the two brothers, they figured their manipulation had worked as planned and decided Rayhana was now their sex slave. They even decided on their next visit to bring their video camera and shoot a film version of their sex with the beautiful maidservant and show their friends at school. Rayhana did not like the situation she had put herself in but was powerless to do anything about it. She had hoped that the good man of the house, who had spent a lot of money on her and her daughter, might intervene and stop his wife from treating her so badly and prevent his sons from continuously blackmailing and raping her. She had not seen her sponsor since the day he had brought her to his house. She was surprised when the chauffeur returned without her sponsor. She held her tongue, deciding not to ask him where his employer was. Deeply engrossed in 1,000 thoughts, she finished cleaning up Hisham's room and made off for Husam's. She pushed the door open without knocking and strode in, knowing that the two boys would be at school for several hours. She froze upon entering. She felt as if her heart stopped and her mouth opened up in disbelief. For a few seconds, with her mouth agape, her eyes bulged as she took in the scene of the Pakistani chauffeur atop the noble lady. Both of them were buck naked on top of each other in Husam's bed. She averted her eyes in another direction and was met with a porn movie splashing across a 54-inch LCD TV screen. Rooted to the floor, she could neither advance nor retreat. Mrs. Ahmed saw her first. She fired off a few Arabic words to her lover, which had the effect of making the chauffeur jump off of her and stand about face. Rayhana closed her eyes when she saw his male organ like a big stick shooting up in front of him. Rayhana expected two things to happen to her now: either the Pakistani would run towards her, catch her by the neck and strangle her to death, or the Cobra woman would shout at her and kick her along with her daughter out of the house. As she gradually opened up her tightly squeezed eyes, nothing could have prepared her for the pleading faces of the two adulterers begging her for mercy. In the awkward silence that followed, with no violence, direct or implied, she counted her good fortune, turned on her heels and fled for her life. She ran to the kitchen and sat near her daughter. Hugging her, she waited to see what was in store for them both. Shortly thereafter, the personal driver of Sheikh Ahmed came into the kitchen. Clothed, he looked very different. For the first time, Rayhana came to know his name, Sabir Ibrahim Shah. Everyone in the family called him Rafiq and she thought it was his real name. Every Indian calls every Arab man in the world Rafiq and every Arab calls every Indian man in the world Rafiq. We will not let this stupidity distract us from the serious issue at hand, which is the adulterous and scandalous affair between Mrs. Ahmed and her husband's chauffeur. The only thing we can mention in passing is that Rafiq in Arabic means a companion in a journey. Sabir Ibrahim Shah looked stunned. When he mentioned his full name, Rayhana could hardly hear him. Then, he sat on the floor and faced the wall. He could not look Rayhana in the face. He told her he did what she had seen because he had no choice. If he refused to do that, he would lose his job. Rayhana did not say a single word. She just kept looking at him. She was still scared that he might attack her or kill her. Then he told her that most of the Arabs were doing the same thing with their servants. If the servants refused to comply, they would be dismissed. Occasionally they would be falsely accused of something and then suffer a lifetime of pain and imprisonment, beheading, or stoning. Rayhana began to weep. Her heart broke when she realized the price of refusing sex could cost a person their life in this country. Amidst her sobs, the ignoble woman quietly walked in, looking totally different in her some decent dress. Rayhana had a flashback from the horrible way she appeared without her clothes. She was skinny and tall. She had nothing by way of face or body to attract a man, which explains why she had a porn movie playing to arouse her chauffeur. It was under these circumstances that Rayhana walked in on them. Sheikh Ahmed had simply married the ignoble woman because her father was a very wealthy Saudi tycoon. Marrying her was an investment that figured well for business deals. Her name was Mastura, meaning a woman who protects her honor and that of her family. That day, however, she might as well have changed her name to Sharmuta, which means adulteress or prostitute. Rayhana vividly remembered her first day lecture when Mastura drilled into her that she hated immoral relations between the servants and members of the most noble family. Hence, we are now more than adequately acquainted with the problem of the rich in third world countries. They claim to be the most righteous and most holy people of God, and they look down on the rest of the world and view the poor as immoral, uncouth, and ill-mannered. Anyway, Mastura opened her mouth, but she spoke softly in whispers. Her loud, harsh voice and her rudeness had disappeared. She asked Sabir delicately if he had spoken to Rayhana or not and the amount of money she had asked for in order to keep her silence. Sabir had spoken to Rayhana but never broached the topic. Not daring to tell Mrs. Ahmed the words he had spoken to her, he turned again to speak to Rayhana, telling her of Mrs. Ahmed's offer. Sabir's words took Rayhana by surprise, so she just stared at him and glanced at the ignoble woman hiding behind him. Of course, Rayhana had no clue that Mrs. Ahmed would be stoned to death in Saudi Arabia for such a transgression. Seeing Rayhana was keeping silent, Sabir made up her mind for her and told Maksura that the maidservant had agreed to keep her lips sealed and would gratefully accept whatever money she was offered. I renamed Mrs. Ahmed, Moksora, because of her pitiful condition. She was a lioness and strutted around like the most moral woman on the face of the earth, and suddenly she was totally broken with her pride in pieces. Moksora in Arabic means a broken person. With trembling hands, Mrs. Ahmed took her checkbook from her pocket and quickly wrote out a check and put it in Rayhana's hand. Rayhana looked at the paper that the ignoble woman gave her without knowing what it represented. Sabir explained to her in Urdu that Mrs. Ahmed had given her a check and he could take her to the bank and open an account for her. Mrs. Ahmed decided to sweeten the deal, telling her secret lover to take Rayhana Khan and her daughter, Ifat, to the nearest bank and open an account for her and assist her in making the deposit. After that, she told him to take them to the super mall and let them buy whatever clothes they wanted and whatever dolls Ifat wanted. He could then have the bills brought to her for reimbursement and she would gladly pay for everything.